Board meeting Monday, November 22nd, 2021. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open, adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on December 10th, 2020, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on December 29th, 2020, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on December 29th, 2020, said notice was posted in the office of the zoning board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching their decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For any members of the public wishing to ask questions or comment on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature when the chairman opens the hearing up for members of the public. Once you are brought into the meeting, you will need to have both audio and video, and you will be sworn in and required to give your name and address. For anyone calling in, use *9 to mute or unmute, to raise your hand or lower your hand, and *6 to mute or unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen, and welcome back. And
Thank you.
you know, Eileen has filled in very well for you.
Oh, that's good to know.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Cantor,
Here.
Mr. Hughes,
Here.
Mr. Mertens,
Here.
Mr. Moretti,
Here.
Mr. Orozco. Not here, right, John?
No.
I have not heard from Mr. Orozco.
Nor have
Mr.
I.
Staya,
Here.
Mr. Stanton said he may be late, so we'll give him a little time. Mr. Gonzalez
Here.
and Chairman Nansen.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Copley, you mind swearing in the professionals, please?
Professionals, please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, the record should reflect tonight we have Mr. Cunliffe, Ms. Beam, Ms. Spiro, and Mr. Aguirre all sworn for the evening. Thank you.
Approval of minutes,
I have no minutes this evening.
vouchers,
I have no vouchers this evening.
correspondence,
Correspondence, number one, the Rules Committee meeting for those members on the committee or the professionals. And that is scheduled for next Monday, November 29th at 6 p.m. Okay, so if anybody has any questions about it, you can contact me in the morning or whatever.
okay,
The other item, I did send out a draft list of possible dates for next year.
right,
One of them that could be a problem is in September 26th. Rosh Hashanah is September 25th to the 27th. So usually we do not have a meeting on a Jewish holiday.
okay,
So we have to pick another date. And in December, the second meeting falls December 26th, which I'm sure we don't want to come in.
No.
So that month you could either do December 5th or the 19th. December 12th is already our regular day.
okay. You want to do that now, or?
We can if you want, if anybody has any suggestions or comments,
Okay,
or if you want to think about it and we'll
What do we,
Do
in September,
do
and
next
December,
meeting.
maybe in September and December, just tighten them up to the 12th and the 19th and the 12th, yeah, the 12th and the 19th on both, right?
We can do that.
I'm good with that.
that's, how's everybody else?
I'm fine.
Alright.
Ready's good.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm good. Also, Paul, you good with that?
I won't know until we get there, so all good.
Okay, then what
Yeah.
I'll do is I'll finalize this and
Okay.
send it with the next agenda, and then everybody, we can vote on it at the next meeting if you want.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. And the last item is not any correspondence, it's just a discussion as to whether the board wants to go back to in-person meetings beginning in January with the reorg meeting. The council has been back for a while, and I know members of the public are asking when we're going to go back. So that's a discussion for the board to have.
Okay. Hey, board,
I have no objections, Mr. Chair. I don't know what the other members think, but I have no objections.
I have no objections neither.
I think we should get back, ready to go.
I'm in agreement with everybody else.
Paul, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I mean, either way, I just, we're seeing a slight uptick,
Yeah.
and we just don't know what the winter is going to reveal. So, it's a shot in the dark right now because everyone is going to mandatory masking and so forth. And, does that mean we're going to need to wear masks in the auditorium, et cetera? I
Good
don't
point.
know.
Good point.
Right now, they're recommended, but they're not required.
Well, they're being required little by little in certain
Right.
locations. So I'd like to just, we can give it a try. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to Zooming.
Yeah, the only problem with that is anybody that's advertised for an in-person meeting, and then
Yeah,
we go back to Zoom, they have to re-advertise, so we may lose meeting nights that we
Ah.
can ill afford to lose, but
Eileen,
That's
what
why-
would be the, I'm sorry.
go ahead, no, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, what would be the latest date that the board could decide and still have notices out in time? Should, as Paul says, things change and we go to mandatory masking or, things remain on an uptick?
Like Christmas week, the week of New Year's, if we're gonna do it for the reorg. Because when I do my notice, I have to put whether we're in person or Zoom. The planning board is also discussing it, and they have a meeting December 2nd. And I think if one board goes back, they should both go back, so I can also see what they say. And at our meeting on December 6th, we could finalize it if it looks like we're gonna go back. Maybe we'd see more of an uptick then because of Thanksgiving and decide, no, we don't want to. I don't know, it's up to you.
I
I'd like
like
to-
that, Eileen. That's a good idea.
Yep.
I'd just like to weigh in too, because I may not be here on the 6th because of a work engagement. So I'll just say that, I'll go with what everybody else thinks. I actually think it's maybe smart for all of us to, want to go to live meetings. And obviously if rules and things dictate that it has to change, then obviously it has to change. But I just want to go on record saying that I'm for it, as long as everybody else is for it. And that way, if I'm not here on the 6th, you have my weigh in.
Thank you. All right, if nobody has any other comments, that's all I have for correspondence.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, any resolutions?
I have no resolutions.
Okay, we'll get to the cases before the board. Case number BA 1809A, Associated Business Park. So use variance, application of Associated Business Park LLC as applicant owner seeking a use variance approval to permit a safety light auto glass facility in an existing
Let's go either.
office warehouse complex on the subject property known as Block 164, Lot 1804, 503 through 505 Okerson Road. Expiration date, February 1st, 2022. Is that correct, Eileen? That should be 2022.
Yes, it is. Sorry about that.
The
Hello,
chairman,
everybody. I'm here.
Okay, let the record reflect that Mr. Roscoe is present.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Mr. Cohen, are you on this case?
Todd, you're muted.
Muted.
You're muted, Todd.
How's that?
There you go.
Better.
Hear you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board professionals. I am the attorney for Associated Business Park LLC. We do have an application before you this evening. Very briefly, I do have 4 witnesses. I don't know if you want to put them all on at the same time.
Let's go ahead and swear them in real quick.
Okay, we have John Plaskanka, our professional engineer. We have John Kraft, the real estate transaction manager from SafeLight. We have John Ray, our traffic engineer, and we have Allison Coffin, our professional planner.
Okay.
I see John is on.
We're putting them into the meeting now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, who's the last one?
Also, Eileen, who is Paul Juan?
I have no idea.
Okay, they're on the screen.
He might be with SafeLight, but I don't know that he's going to testify.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure though. Maybe.
That may be the wrong meeting here. This is IPP Solar.
It's an.
No, this
That's
is
next.
Associate Business Park.
Okay, so that's the next item on the meeting. Okay, sorry. Should I just leave until that comes back on?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
You're good?
Okay.
Is everybody on, Eileen?
Oh, I don't see Allison.
And I can't be sure. Just let me know when everyone's in.
Hold on 1 minute.
Thank you.
Allison was on there earlier.
I see Allison in the waiting room. Her hand is up, but I don't see those other 2 Johns
Yep.
that
I
you
don't either.
mentioned. Todd, I don't even see them in the waiting room.
I don't know. They have.
I see John Kraft now and John Ray. They both have their hands up.
Okay, there they go. Guys, we'll get you in a minute.
You might have to do it a second time because sometimes they don't go right in.
I keep getting error codes.
What is it saying?
Failed to promote the panelist.
Do we need to bring them in one at a time, maybe?
We're trying to, but we're getting error messages.
No, I'm thinking like as we testify, we could, I don't know.
We could try that.
We
Maybe
could
we
do
have
it.
too many people. I don't know.
Can they hear us, you think?
Yes.
Okay, hang in there, guys. We'll get you on.
So Todd, you want to begin with John, seeing that he's on?
Yeah, John's my first witness anyway, so that might work.
Okay, right,
Why don't
John.
you swear him in. I'll give you a brief opening and then John can
Okay.
testify, then we'll go from there.
Okay, very good. Do you swear the testimony you give this evening be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. John J. Plaskanka, Plaskonka, professional engineer, Manalapan, New Jersey.
Sworn?
Thank you, John. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you may recall back in August of 2018, this applicant received conditional use variance, preliminary and final site plan approval from this board to construct two multi-tenant structures of less than 40,000 square feet with tenants of less than 5,000 square feet on Okerston Road. I'm happy to report that both buildings are constructed and all improvements have been put in as well. The site is fully operational and is almost completely rented. The applicant is now proposing to lease 2 of the units in building number 2 to SafeLight Auto Glass, which requires a use variance as automobile repair services are not a permitted use in the SED zone. There are no other site improvements proposed. What I plan to do is have Mr. Plaskanka briefly describe the site as it exists today, review the variances and waivers that were briefly granted. There's a couple engineering items in Charlie's letter think John will touch upon. I then have Mr. John Kraft, the real estate transaction manager from Safelight, who will describe the operations of the site, answer a lot of the questions posed in Charlie and Jen's letters. I then have John Ray, traffic engineer, who will wrap up the traffic on site, and Allison, who will address the variance that we're requesting this evening. If that's okay with the chairman,
Yes.
we'd like to proceed in that fashion. John's been sworn, and then we can move in and out with the witnesses. John, if you would briefly describe the site for the board as it exists today?
Todd, let's put his.
I'm sorry.
Let's put his credentials.
I got that. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. John, would you
Before
put your
we-
professional qualifications on the record for the board, please?
Before we start,
Yeah.
Todd, we looked up the error code we're getting, and
Yeah.
those 3 people need to log out and log back in.
Okay.
I don't
Guys,
know.
if you hear that,
And I
please-
see John Ray and John Kraft on the screen. It's
Okay.
just Allison.
But we can't move them in as participants. They have
They're
to
in.
log
I
out.
see them.
Yeah,
I
they're
see
in.
them.
And we've been trying to move them in 3 or 4 times, and it won't come in. We keep getting error messages. So
They're
they have
there.
to log out.
Try again.
Why they're on the screen. I
Thank
can't-
you, John. John Kraft, can you hear us?
Yes, I
They're
can
on
hear.
the-
Do
They're
I
on
need to
the,
log out? This is John Kraft. Do I need to log out?
Yes. And
Yeah,
go
we can
back
hear you,
in.
John, but we can't see you, unfortunately. If you could try it again?
Sure, I'll leave and come back.
thank
Okay.
you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
John, would you please put your professional educational qualifications on the record as professional engineer?
I've been a professional engineer in New Jersey for the last 50 years. I've appeared throughout Middlesex, Monmouth, and Ocean County before planning boards, zoning boards. For this time frame, I'm president of Concept Engineering Consultants in Manalapan, New Jersey.
we'll accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
John,
This
would
site,
you, describe the site as it exists today for the board and how we got to where we are today?
yeah, this site, as you pointed out, is on Okerson Road. It's a little bit east of the inspection station, motor vehicle inspection station. That's in Freehold. And we're close to the Freehold Township Howell line. And the property is surrounded by the Route 33 bypass in the rear, Burks Brook on the right side, and the township line, Okerson Road in front, and a right-of-way to the east. It's about 6 acres of property, 6+ acres. And as you pointed out, this board granted an approval in 2018 to construct 2 buildings, which totaled about 40,000 square feet for both buildings. And it was under case number BA 1809. The buildings were constructed and all site improvements, including landscaping, lighting, infiltration basin, walks, parking, loading, etc. And the improvements were inspected by the town engineer as they went in. And then eventually the building department granted C of Os to approximately 10 occupants that are there right now that occupy the 2 buildings. Safelight Glass will be another occupant. They want to lease 5,400 square feet plus or minus in units 503 and 505 on the left side of the building number 2. That's the plan. They have been part of my client's property where they rented in Freehold on a much smaller piece of property. This doubles the size of the space they have now, so they could better operate their business. And they'll talk about that with Mr. Kraft shortly. So there's no site improvements. There's no building expansion. There's no parking expansion. Simply a new tenant, Safelight Glass. In Charlie's letter of October 16th, he points out that the board granted variances for us in 2018, including front yard, a use variance, accessory structures, landscaping, loading, sidewalks were also waivers granted at that time. And at this time, we're here for the use variance as Todd pointed out, that automobile service stations are not permitted uses in the SED zone, requiring a D1 variance for proposed Safe Light Auto Glass. The building was constructed in accordance with architectural plans that the board had approved with their professionals. It's been built that way, and there's no change to the facade of the building, only interior fit up for Safe Light in the future. So there's no additional waivers required. Our planner will speak to the variance outlined, and Safe Light will talk on the various items that are listed in Charlie's letter, such as biohazard materials, storage of materials, retail sales. I can point out that the existing lighting is what was approved, so the existing lighting is not changing. It's adequate for the site. Safe Light does not occupy 501. That's a separate tenant that's there. They're only occupying the 5,400 square feet of units 503 to 505. John Ray will talk to traffic. As I pointed out, Safe Light has outgrown their facilities in Freehold and need this double-sized space to continue their operation in the future.
So John, in wrapping up then, it's safe to say that all site improvements were constructed as per the approved resolution. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that we'll obtain all utility department, building and construction department permits, and approval is required for the proposed internal building modifications. And any other minor things that Charlie asked for, we'll take care of them, like such as plat details.
Okay.
Charlie?
Todd, there are no conditions in that 2018 resolution that are still outstanding, is that correct?
I'm sorry, Jennifer?
There are no conditions in that 2018 resolution that are still outstanding, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Charlie?
That's it for the engineer, unless the board has any questions.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions. They submitted an as-built survey of what the site looks like now. It looks like it's in general conformance with site plan approval. My questions are all traffic and use related with the applicant, so.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just have one item, John. I just need you to modify the plan because the site is dual frontage and your plans just need to recognize the second frontage on the southerly property line. There's no rear lot line. It's just two fronts.
That's correct.
So if you could just modify that on the plan, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Any questions of the board of the engineer?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to know, the site that's going to be occupied, proposed to be occupied, are there going to be roller curtain doors? Are they going to bring vehicles into the building?
I think that should be handled by the a client himself, Mr.
Yeah,
Kraft.
Safe Flight's going to testify next. They'll address that.
All right, we'll save it for then.
Okay. Any questions of the engineer?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Cohen?
Mr. Chairman, my next witness would be Mr. John Kraft from Safe Flight.
Okay.
John would obviously need to be sworn.
Yes.
I see John Ray on also. Is Allison on? Yeah.
I don't see Allison.
We're
Okay,
still
well-
getting an error code on Allison. She has to log off and log back in.
Okay. Well,
Thank
while
you.
she's doing that, thank you. Let me swear both Johns in at
Okay.
once. John, if you could just unmute, John Ray, that is. You swear the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
I do.
Okay, starting with you, Mr. Kraft, state your name for the record.
My name is John Kraft. I'm real estate transaction manager for Safe Light Auto Glass at 7400 Safe Light Way, Columbus, Ohio.
Thank you. And Mr. Ray, please.
John Ray, REA, a principal with McDonough and Ray Associates, Traffic and Transportation Engineers in Manasquan, New Jersey.
Very well. Mr. Cohen, your witnesses.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to go with John Kraft first. John, good evening. You've identified your position with Safe Flight. You're obviously familiar with the proposed operation that's going to be taking place on this site this evening, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you've testified before other boards and other townships on behalf of Safe Flight?
I have.
Okay. I'd like to run through some of the questions this evening also that were raised in Charlie's letter in doing this back and forth. Could you just basically describe the overall operation on the site, basically what SafeLight does?
Basically, SafeLight Auto Glass does nothing but automotive glass repair and replacement. We'll fix nicks in your windshield, we'll replace windshields, we replace side glass, rear glass. That's all we do. We also, on newer automobiles that require recalibration services for the advanced driver assistance systems, we recalibrate the cameras. Still there?
Yeah, I think that was Allison, maybe. I don't know.
No, that was Glenn.
Okay.
Again,
John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Again, all we perform is automotive glass repair and replacement. We do no other automotive repair services, just auto glass. SafeLight has been around since 1946. We operate in all 50 states, approximately 805 locations.
Super. Specifically, what are days and hours of operation?
This particular location will operate 8 to 5, Monday through Saturday, closed on Sunday.
Okay. And about our number of employees?
Number of employees is approximately 15. Now, of those 15 employees, approximately 10 of those employees are mobile techs that will work off site. The other 5 will be administrative and auto glass technicians to do glass installation on premise.
Okay, let's separate the two. So the 5 that are on site, they're on site all day. They do the work that your appointment customers deal with. Is that correct?
That's correct. It would consist of a store manager, a customer service representative, and anywhere from 2 to 3 technicians.
Okay, and they do, you have appointments during the day for customers. Is that correct?
Yes, you cannot come into the store and have your glass replaced by just driving into the store. Appointments are made in advance, anywhere from a day to 2 weeks out. You schedule an appointment and the glass is delivered that night for the following day for that job that's done that same day. The glass is delivered that night before. So we don't sell automotive glass out of the store. We just schedule jobs every day, prior to the day they show up to have their car worked on. The typical job takes anywhere from an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to be done. Almost all customers come in and they wait on their vehicle. Again, it's an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to do the work.
Okay. And the 10 employees that are off-site, do they come to the site every day? Do they leave? Do they have truck vehicles? Could you explain how they operate?
Sure. They have a company issued vehicle. They take it home at night. They show up in the morning around 7 to 7:30. They load their jobs for the day and their paperwork, and then they leave and they're gone the balance of the day. And when they're finished with their mobile jobs, they take the vehicle home and then they come back the next day and do it all over again.
Okay. So outside of your employees and your customers that make appointments to come to the site, is there any other site traffic that you anticipate during the day? Deliveries, things
No
like
other
that?
deliveries. The only deliveries you'll get will be mail delivery, and then at night, and the times vary, but the jobs for that next day are delivered sometime during the night from the warehouse in Pine Brook.
All services provided by SafeLight are provided inside the facility?
Everything is done inside.
Okay, so as far as the fire report that came back and said no work outside, no work in the fire lanes, you have no issues with that as a condition of approval, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There was a question in Charlie's letter about vehicle wash downs being done on site. Is any of that done on site?
No vehicles are washed down on site.
Okay, what about vehicle stores on site?
There'll be approximately 2 spare vans stored on site. And then the other vehicles that are on site during the day would be the employees that work at the facility, which would be the 5 employees that are there during the day.
Okay. What about refuse? Do you have anything other than typical office refuse?
Just office refuse and the glass that is removed from vehicles that's replaced is actually recycled and sent back to our warehouse in Pine Brook.
Very good. So that answers the glass question. Hazardous materials. Any hazardous materials on site and how are they handled and what quantities?
Yeah, there's actually four materials or four items that are considered hazardous materials that are kept on site. They're in very small quantities. They're kept in a 4-foot wide by 8 or 6 foot tall fireproof cabinet. And what we have is what's called a primer. And we have approximately 10 cans of primer that are in 50 milliliter cans. We have what's called an activating agent, which we have approximately 10 cans of that, which are in 5 milliliter containers. We have the urethane, which is the material that is used as an adhesive that has the glass, you set the glass in your windshield cavity that it adheres to. There's approximately 120 tubes of those. They're 465 milliliter tubes. They're like a sausage packet, and they're put into like what you would call a gun, that you use for cocking. And each vehicle takes approximately 2 tubes of that. And then there's glass cleaner, which is your typical type household glass cleaner. There's approximately 48 cans of that, and they're 19 ounces each. All of this can fit within one 4x6 fireproof cabinet. The urethane typically is kept within the facility and not stored in the fireproof cabinet because it's really not that much of a really considered a hazardous material. If you ingest it, it's going to make you sick. Other than that, it's really not a hazardous type material.
Okay. And there'll be no outside storage of any materials on site, correct?
Correct.
And no retail sales. I believe you mentioned that previously.
No retail sales. All jobs are scheduled in advance and vehicles are brought on site and again worked on for approximately an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and then they're taken off site.
No architectural changes to the outside of the building. Everything is changed will be interior. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I believe the engineer mentioned you are moving from your existing site. You're moving to a larger facility. And I think the question in the letter was you've obviously accounted for your future expansion in this type of business. Is that correct?
That's correct. We've outgrown the existing facility we're in right now. The current facility is at 1716 Genesee Drive and approximately 2,600 square feet.
Excellent.
We've actually relocated several times. I've been with Safe Life for 25 years. We were initially on Route 9 in Howell, moved out of that facility to this facility in Genesee Drive in 2006. We've been there 15 years, outgrown it in 15 years, and relocating again. Hopefully this will satisfy us for a while.
All right, that's everything I have of Mr. Kraft. Does the board and their professional have any questions? We'd be happy to answer them.
Charlie?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, for Mr. Kraft, on a typical day, so you said you got 2 trucks or 2 vans, spare vans that you keep, you got 5 employees. You say each service takes an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. How do they drop their vehicles off and stay there, or do they get it, where they Uber home, or like are vehicles being parked on there long term, or what's the turnover, I guess?
The turnover is typically probably 90% of the customers bring their vehicle in and wait on it until it's finished and then leave. There will be a couple drop-offs that will be scheduled. That would probably amount to no more than 2 a day tops. And those people will drop it off typically in the morning and pick it up later in the day.
So during an hour period, how many would you say you can service in that hour and 15 time span? 1 car, 5 cars?
Maximum 3. And that's with 3 technicians working that day. If there's 3 technicians there, they can do typically 3 an hour.
Okay, so it's not like a typical auto repair where someone drops it off first thing in the morning, comes pick it up at the end of the day or the next day kind of thing. You're getting a changeover. So during a typical hour, you might have the 2 vans, 5 employees, and 3 vehicles. So you're looking at 10 vehicles.
Yeah, and those 3 vehicles would all be in shop inside the building.
Okay. And then Todd, just to clarify, they're proposing to occupy 2 tenant spaces, right? Or is it
Correct.
3? So
2.
So 2?
Yes, it's a total of approximately 5,400 square feet, I believe.
Okay, so
Yes.
to give
I
you-
have that as 3 tenant spaces though, Todd. I have 503, 504, 505. Is that not right?
That's
Not
not
right.
right.
It's 503 and 505.
Correct. 501 is an
And
existing
505,
tenant.
okay.
So just to give the board perspective, the approval in 2018 was each tenant space was allowed a maximum of 10 vehicles. So for those 2 units, they could have a maximum of 20 parking spaces allotted. So on an hourly basis, you've heard testimony from them. They're anticipating maybe 10 spaces of the 20 that they're allotted. I'll let Mr. Ray give more testimony on that because I think he did some daily counts for the site as well.
Correct.
So, that's really all I have, Mr. Chair. I think they answered all the questions pretty comprehensively.
Thank you.
I just have 1 or 2 questions. So there's no shifts, right? Your employees come in, come out, it's just one shift, 8 to 5?
Yes.
And then when you talk about refuse, how is the glass delivered? I guess that's the question. It comes by tractor trailer, by box truck, like how is it delivered?
It comes by straight box truck and the glass is all on a rolling cart. And depending on how many jobs there are that day, typically each rolling cart holds 25 pieces. And those the truck's backed up to an overhead door. It's got a lift gate on it. The lift gate's brought down, the cart's rolled inside the shop and left there. And then the glass that goes back to the warehouse, when that delivery is made the next day, the broken glass is all on that same rack and it's put back in that straight box truck and sent back to the warehouse.
So there's nothing kind of protecting the glass, like no like styrofoam or cardboard or anything that's like kind of separating the panes of glass or keeping them from breaking during delivery?
The racks they're sort of hard to explain, but the racks have rods in between each piece of glass. And there's like 2 rods between each windshield and they're rubber coated. And the spacing is probably 3 or 4 inches between each. And they're just slotted in there in the rack system.
Okay, so there's no like recyclable materials that are coming off these trucks. It's just the glass and that's it.
Just the glass. Now, the curved temper glass, which would be your side glass and your rear glass, that is shipped and stored in cardboard because it's scratched very easily. And that cardboard would be refuse. But again,
That'd be like recycling, right?
yes. But the thing is, you're lucky if you get 1 curved temper job a day. 90.
I'm just curious. I'm not worried about it. I just want to make sure that the board is clear on like what's coming and what's going out. It's totally fine.
Okay.
I just wanted to, because I myself didn't understand it. So I just was curious how that was going to work.
Sure.
And then
Jen, if I could just add on to that question of the delivery. So
Sure.
it happens overnight and then is a delivery an employee of Safe Flight or is there separate employees that stay to assist in the delivery? How does that work?
No, it's an employee out of Safe Flight's warehouse.
Okay.
And that truck hits several stores. It just doesn't run to that store. That truck is loaded up and it could hit anywhere from 5 to 7 stores all night long. It's a night run that starts probably about 9 o'clock and it'll run till probably 4 or 5 in the morning.
and it's just 1 truck per night.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Saya.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So for Mr. Kraft, sir, my daughter has had 2 acoustic advanced driver windshields replaced by Safe Light down in South Jersey. So I think I have some experience in what you're talking about here.
Okay.
So based on what I have experienced, the replacement of a windshield, an acoustic windshield, and the calibration, I think takes a little bit more than an hour and a half.
It depends if it's a static or not. I mean, some of them take a half hour after the windshield's replaced. Every car is different. Some are more difficult than others. Some you can replace a windshield in a half hour and recalibrate it in a half hour. Others that are more sophisticated, like a convertible, will take more time. They could take an hour replacement on the windshield. It could take 15 minutes on the recalibration. It could take a half hour. So typically on average, we use an hour and 15 minutes because most of them run anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half.
Right.
And approximately 20% of the vehicles, maybe 15 to 20% of the vehicles now require recalibration.
Correct. And I suspect that that's a growing business. And
It
that
is a
more and
growing
more
business.
windshields are going to be required to be replaced as the seagulls like to drop their shells. You know, that's one of the big things down in South Jersey, of course.
Yeah,
But,
the recalibration business is a growing part of our business. It is.
So then the trucks that roll, do they also replace acoustic windshields and calibrate off-site, or everything is done on-site? That's the question.
The recalibrations are done on site. The
Got it.
mobile just does the replacement. Now they can do what's called a static recalibration, where it can be just plugged into the computer port and the cars run for about 10 minutes and it recalibrates itself. The more sophisticated vehicles, such as your BMWs, your Volvos, your Lexus, and so on, they need to come in. They need to come in shop, because those require different kind. Every car is recalibrated differently. Some, like I said earlier, just require a device plugged into the computer system. Others require a stand to be set up in front of the car at certain distances, and what's on that stand is a large piece of cardboard that has symbols on it, sort of like your bar scan codes. And
Yes,
the
sir.
cameras have to read those systems for X amount of time, and then that reprograms it all. You'd have to go in the shop and see how it's done. It's rather interesting to see how it's done. And all the manufacturers are all done differently. None are the same.
Great. So along with the testimony that's on the record, so then we understand, you know, some cars may be there longer than others. Some have to take a delivery of the different windshields, whether it's OEM or it's something that is third party delivered and installed and et cetera, right? So,
Yes.
So Charlie, you know, that is what I've been hoping that we could, you know, get on the record and lay it out. Over.
And,
So, Mr.
and Paul,
Kraft.
something else too, I'd like to bring your attention. There's probably, of all the jobs that are done in the store, each store every day, approximately 20% of them are repairs. And a repair does not involve removal of the windshield. It's when you have like a star, you know, a small crack or a small star that we fill in with the resin. And those repairs typically take a half hour maximum.
Right.
So those are in and out real quick. And that accounts for a good 20% of the daily volume of the store, believe it or not.
Yes, I just know that, you know, the Kia coming off the line, the Tellurides, their vehicles were exploding in people's garages early on, and those were acoustics. And from my experience, when the acoustics crack, they split pretty good. So, but understand what you're saying, Mr. Kraft. Thank you. Charlie, we're good?
So, Mr. Kraft, just a question, I guess, you know, at any one time, how many vehicles can you physically fit in the building and service at one point in time?
The site plan on this vehicle shows we could accommodate seven vehicles in there at any one time.
Okay. And then you said typically 80% of those are an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. If it's this acoustical repair, it could be longer, but it's atypical for you to have someone arriving and parking in a parking lot and waiting for, you know, an hour plus to be, you know, in a queue to then get service, correct?
Correct.
And you don't double book as part of any of your appointments or anything like that?
Not usually, no.
Okay.
Only
so,
doctors can do
that. Yeah, true enough. So, you know, I think we've got enough testimony from an operational perspective. I'll let Mr. Ray give more testimony on the site itself. Todd, just from not the applicant, but the owner of the property itself, are they 95% occupied of all the tenant space right now, 100% with Safe Light, or where are they at?
With Safe Light, I think they've only got 1 or 2 spots, and I believe they're in negotiations with other tenants, so it's going to be filled pretty quick if it's not close to already.
All right. Yeah, I think, Mr. Say, to answer your question, I think this will give more perspective on the site as a whole, on how the parking shakes out based off what's there now versus what's being proposed. We'll let Mr. Ray add to that.
Thank you, Charlie.
Any other questions of the operations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kraft, real quickly, minor question. Are this maintenance of the vehicles done on site? Or you just take them out for like oil changes and stuff?
Nope, they're taken out to a third party.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other
Mr. Chairman,
questions? Yes,
how many trucks, how many Safe Light trucks are work at the one site at any time, both mobile and deliveries and everything else? How many would be parked there at night?
Maximum of 2. And there's spare vans there's spare vans to pick up in case we have one that goes down.
But you do mobile work too, don't you? Like you go to somebody's garage or somebody's house to do the repairs.
Yes, yes. And like I said previously, there's approximately 10 mobile vans that run out of this facility as well. That are there first thing in the morning. They're gone by 8 o'clock and they never come back till the next morning.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions of Mr. Kraft at this time?
Mr. Cohen?
Seeing none, if Mr. Ray, I believe, has been sworn already.
I have, yes.
John, if you would please put your qualifications as a professional traffic engineer on the record.
Yeah, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My specialty is traffic engineering, parking consulting, and I've appeared before this board on numerous occasions in the past as an expert witness.
We accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. John, you prepared a parking analysis for the proposed Safe Light Auto Glass at this particular site. Is that correct?
I did, yes.
Would you please share your findings with the board tonight?
Sure. Well, I did several things. First of all, our firm did the original traffic and parking study for the Associated Business Park. So we had a little familiarity with the site. I did several things. I've made several visits to the site during typical business hours, mid to late morning, mid to late afternoon, to do parking counts at the existing site on Okerson Road. And I observed consistently 35 to 40 vehicles parked within the confines of the parking lot during those times. And there are 117 parking spaces in the parking lot. The second thing I did was I went to the Safe Light site on Genesee Drive in Freehold. It's only about 10 minutes away. And I did observe, the parking that occurred on that site. And as Mr. Kraft indicated, I did see 2 Safe Light vans that were parked at that facility, as well as approximately 5 employee vans, not employee vans, employee vehicles. So the testimony that he gave is consistent with what I observed at the Genesee Drive site. So what I've concluded is that if this application is approved, we're going to have the need for another somewhere between 5 to 10 parking spaces being occupied on a consistent basis by the Safe Light operation. That'll put us between 40 to 45 parked vehicles within the confines of the parking lot, which has 117 parking spaces. And what we will have left if this site is approved, if I'm not mistaken, Todd, is one 5,400 square foot unit, which will have 50 to 60 parking spaces available. Parking will not be an issue. And certainly this use is consistent with the uses that are out there, and it won't create a parking problem. There will be plenty of parking left for that last unit. So that's what I've concluded.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Ray?
Mr. Conley?
Yes, so John, what was the number that you said you were at the existing Freehold site for the vans and
There were 2 vans that were parked there, and some of the parking occurred on the street. There's a parking lot that was right in front of where the sign was for Safe Light, but there were some vehicles parked on the street. It appeared to be about 5 employee vehicles at that site, in addition to the 2 vans.
Okay, and so Mr. Chair, just to add. Yeah, just to add to Mr. Ray's comments, so we included, as part of our reviewing the application, Matt Howard from the zoning office provided us a detailed list of all the tenants that they issued a CO and approximate square footage. In our report, we included a parking calculation based off of those uses. We calculated the demand, without Safe Light auto glass per our parking ordinance of like 36 spaces. So with 117 per, that's currently existing on site, for Safe Light Auto Glass and this other 5,400 unspecified future tenant user, you've got like 73 to 78 parking spaces. I think what you'll find, and Mr. Ray, you can correct me, that the original parking demand was based off of a spread of 20% office and 80% warehouse for both.
That's correct. Yes.
So, I mean, in reviewing, and Todd, you can opine on this, You know, is it an actual reality that the users are utilizing a significantly less office space in each one of these units?
That appears to be the case, based on the actual parking counts,
Yeah.
between 35 and 40 vehicles on site consistently.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, it's not atypical. We'll see like flex or warehouse with office to be like 90-10. So I think in this instance, you know, you have a site that's right now overparked from what the tenant users that are there. So I really don't have any issue with the parking demand. I think they provided adequate testimony. That's really all I have.
Thank you,
Jennifer?
Chair.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Board members, anything of Mr. Rea?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cohen?
Mr. Chairman, we have one witness left. That's our professional planner, Allison Coffin. I do not believe she has been sworn.
That's correct, Allison. Would you raise your right hand? We'll swear you in. The sort of testimony you give this evening be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Name for the record, please.
Allison Coffin, Coffin, licensed planner in the state of New Jersey and certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners.
Mr. Cohen.
Hey, Allison, if you'd be kind enough to put your full qualifications on the record.
I have a bachelor's degree from Boston College. I have a professional planner's license from the state of New Jersey, and I have a certification from the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've had those for 16 years, and I have testified in front of this board a great many times.
We accept your credentials, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Allison, you're familiar with the application before the board this evening, and you've had the opportunity to review Jennifer's letter of November 9th.
Yes.
Would you please address the reasoning behind our use variance this evening?
Sure. It's my opinion that special reasons exist for the granting of the use variance and that the site is particularly suited to the proposed use, and there's no significant detriment to the zone plan or the surrounding properties that would result from the granting of the variance. In this case, the special reasons for the granting of the variance exist in that the purposes of the municipal land use law will be advanced due to the particular suitability of the site to this particular use. The use itself is a very limited and specialized type of auto repair use, not your typical auto repair or auto body shop. The business only installs and repairs vehicle windshields and does no other auto repair or auto body work. This specific use does not involve extensive automotive repair or vehicles being parked overnight awaiting repair, nor does it involve the equipment and heavy processes of auto body work. The type of space that this specific use needs is the sort of flex space which accommodates materials warehousing and interior space on the site to accommodate windshield repair and replacement, such as the spaces which exist on this property. It's my opinion that there's no substantial detriment to the granting of the requested variance. The prior approval limited each unit to 10 parking spaces, and the Safe Light, which occupies 2 units, will only use at most 10 parking spaces, though they could expand to the 20 that would be assigned to these units. So there's no detriment in terms of parking. The site was developed with 117 parking spaces. The current occupancy has a parking need of 36, leaves 81 spaces available to support this use, and they'll only be using 10 to 20, which is well beyond what the use will need. The use causes no change to the site function or appearance, so there's no impact to either the other tenants or off-site. There's no long-term detriment to the zone plan that's caused by approving this tenant for this property. Though auto repair and the larger sense is not permitted in the zone, the Safe Light auto glass use functions more like a permitted warehouse office use than it does a typical auto garage, in that it's very limited in the types of auto repair that it does. And this type of use is in keeping with the character and purpose of the SED zone in general. So for those reasons, it's my opinion that special reasons exist supporting the granting of the use variance and that there would be no detriment that would result from the granting of this variance, either to the general public or to the zone plan.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Allison?
Jennifer?
So maybe I missed it. What goal of zoning are you advancing?
The appropriate use in an appropriate location.
Okay. No, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any questions of the board?
No?
Seeing none. I guess, Mr. Tropoli, at this time, we'll take a motion to open the public.
Yes, that's, that wraps up your case, Mr. Cullen?
Yes, that
witnesses?
concludes our presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Right. That's correct,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. Open to the public, questions and comments.
I'll make a
Mr. Chair?
motion.
Motion by Mr. Hughes,
I'll
Second
second.
that.
seconded by Mr. Saya. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, at this time, we'll take questions from the public, questions and comments of the applicant.
At this time, the chairman has opened up the hearing for members of the public that have questions or comments on the application for Associate Business Park. Please use the raise your hand feature. We'll bring you into the meeting one at a time. You will need audio and video, be sworn in, and if required to give your name and address. Thank you. We have a Peter Guilfoyle who has his hand raised.
Okay.
We're trying to bring him into the meeting, but he's not responding. So Mr. Guilfoyle, if you can, please respond.
And just a second. Nobody.
He's not there anymore, so I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Guilfoyle, please sign back on if you have a question.
It appears he dropped his hand.
Yeah, and I have no one else with their hand raised.
Okay. Okay,
Oh, hold on.
Hold on one second.
Candace Dovenero.
We have a Kenneth Dovenero.
okay.
I think she wants the solar.
Not coming over either.
Is your hand still raised?
No.
No, it dropped.
I think I think they want to speak on the other application, not this one.
Okay. Okay, this is safety light auto glass, so,
Application BA 18-09 Alpha.
yep, Associate Business Park.
We have no one with their hand raised.
I'll take a motion to close the public.
I make a motion to close.
Mr. Saya, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Marie. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Mr. Cohen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation. I think the applicant has met their burden of proof this evening. We have an existing site with a use that seems to fit perfectly there. There's no detriment to the surrounding properties, and I would request that the board grant the use variance requested this evening.
Any questions from Charlie or Jennifer?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just two quick things, just conditions. Obviously, applicant's got to get all building construction permits for the improvements internal to the structure. And then Monmouth County Board of Health just asked for clarification, making sure that the septic system that's existing can adequately handle, the change in use. So, they got to get any Monmouth County Board of Health sign off on the application. So
No problem.
that's all I have.
Nothing from me.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the use variance as requested by this applicant, given the specifications by Mr. Cunliffe are met.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Mr. Mertens. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Cantor,
Mr. Kraft, thank you for coming back to Howell, and that's a yes.
thank you. Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mertens,
Yes.
Mr. Moretti,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Saya,
Yes.
and Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Cologne.
everybody for their time this evening, and see you soon.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Eileen, we're gonna take a 10-minute before.
Okay, at this time, the board's going to take a 10-minute recess. They'll be back at 8:15.
Okay. Case number BA 2114, IPP Solar, conditional use variance, preliminary final major site subdivision, and preliminary and final major site plan. Okay. Application IPP Solar LLC, applicant is Stavola Realty Company. Lot 17 is Stavola Construction Material Inc. Lots 27 and 28 is owner seeking conditional use variance, preliminary final major subdivision, and preliminary and final major site plan to construct a 23.25 plus or minus acre, 4.7 MW solar facility consisting of 2 solar panel arrays, 2 concrete pad for equipment, 7-foot high chain link perimeter security fence with the gate, and 2 associated 26-foot wide gravel drives on lots 28 and 17. Additional associated site improvements including stormwater management basin and buffer landscaping, as well as additional electrical utility improvements on adjacent lot 18 to construct a proposed solar farm facility to the JCP&L electrical grid network on premises known as Block 41, Lot 17, 27, 28 Victory Road. Expiration date, February 6, 2022. Mr. Alfieri.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. This property, as the board chairman summarized, is the subject of the application tonight for a solar farm. This property, my clients, the applicants are under contract to purchase property from the Stavola company. We have many witnesses to present, and I know, Chair, you want to finish at 10. So we'd like to start at least tonight with our engineer, Christopher Rosati. And I see Chris's name there, so I think he's already in as a panelist. Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Tropoli.
Okay, Sal, how long do you expect that Mr. Rosati will be? Will you be having another witness tonight? If so, we could swear in another person or?
Yeah, we also have a representative, Kyle, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, from Crichton. I think he's sitting with Chris. Chris, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay, great.
Okay, so why don't I swear both in, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Gentlemen, raise your right hands, please. Swear the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Rosati, your name for the record?
Christopher P. Rosati, ROSATI, FWH Associates, Towns River, New Jersey.
And sir, again, you're appearing tonight. The other gentleman, I didn't catch his last name.
Kyle Weese, it's W-E-I-S-E, Weese. I'm with Trident Environmental in Towns River, New Jersey.
Thank you very well. All sworn, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tropoli. Mr. Rosati, we're going to have you testify only engineering issues this evening, and therefore would you place those credentials on the record, please?
Yes, I have a Bachelor's of Science degree from Rutgers University in civil engineering. Graduated in 1994. Since graduating in 1994, I've been involved in the field of civil engineering, most in land development, from as small as single family plot plans on up to several hundred unit multifamily developments. Design stormwater management, water systems, sanitary sewer systems. 2 years of my career, I left FWH Associates and I was a township engineer and planning board engineer in Millstone, New Jersey, when I worked for Leon Esavakian. And I came back to FWH in 2006. I'm a principal with the firm and I've testified before many boards in the state of New Jersey. I have testified in Howell at the planning board several times, but I don't believe I've hit the zoning board.
No. We accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosati, would you describe for the board where this property is located and the general characteristics of the property?
Yes. Am I allowed to share screen? Do I have that ability?
Yes.
Okay. I have several exhibits.
Are they already marked?
I don't believe so, but hold on. For some reason, I'm having a hard time here. Hold on a minute.
Chris, did you provide them in advance?
Well, we have, yeah, I think Jared sent you the colored rendering and the aerial photo this morning.
Right, so the state regs require that all exhibits to be used at a hearing be submitted 48 hours in advance. So if they're not submitted 48 hours in advance, you cannot use them or refer to them.
Okay.
So you could refer, Chris, to the plan that was submitted as part of the application itself, which is obviously marked.
Sure, okay. So we have frontage on Victory Road. If you can look at even at the overall site phasing plan, sheet 3 of 15.
Can you put that up, Chris?
You're gonna have to give me a second. I have to bring up the whole set.
Okay.
If not, we can bring it up.
And the plan
Okay.
says it's been marked as A3.
Yeah, but you have to go to document distribution sheet.
One or two.
Two.
Yeah.
And then preliminary final major subdivision. Right here. That one.
Bring it up. There we go.
What sheet do you need, Chris?
3, but I think I might have it on my screen. Let's see if this works
I
here.
think we're ready to share anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah, so sheet 3.
Can you get sheet 3? I think the next one. Oh, no, nope, you're going the wrong way. Right there, stop. Down 1. Right there. Why is it not, there you go.
Yeah, it may take some time to regenerate. Okay. So the subject property is in block, all in block 41. We have lots 17, 18, 27, and 28. We are a split zone. The zone boundary is essentially the southern branch or the Conrail right-of-way that runs roughly north to south. And if you can see on the exhibit, it basically bisects the solar panel arrays that we're proposing. On the right side, that is lots 17 and 18. That's in the SED, Special Economic Development Zone District. To the left of the exhibit is lots 27 and 28. That is in the ARE6, Agricultural Rural Estate Zone District. In total, we are roughly 28 acres in size. We have 8 acres on the ARE6 zone portion and 19.9 acres on the right in lot 17. As you can see on the exhibit, the tract is bounded by Victory Road to the north, industrial uses to the south and east, and residential uses along Victory Road and a small driveway access to the west. As I said, the Conrail right-of-way bisects the tract. and is that division line for the zone. We also have lot 18 to the south, which will be part of this application. I'll get to that in a minute. And that is rather important why that lot is involved. And we also have a subdivision that is contemplated that in the lower left corner of lot 17. The existing site right now is fully wooded with areas of lot 17 appearing to be more of a successional growth in line with historic aerial photos that show improvements on this lot several decades ago. The remains of a concrete foundation exist in the northwest corner of the site. Lot 17 also contains several areas of mapped wetlands, again, referring to the exhibit. On the frontage along Victory Road, we have 2 isolated sections of wetlands that we are, part of the application will be a general permit number 6 to fill them. And in the lower right corner of that lot 17, we have an area of wetlands that has been deemed exceptional in value and has an associated buffer of 150 feet. Again, the wetlands along the north of Victory Road have been verified by DEP as being isolated. Now, the big question I know everyone has is why are we here? Why are we using these 2 lots? They are 2 wooded lots, and we are proposing to remove approximately 22 acres of trees in order to put in solar arrays to produce about 4.7 megawatts of electricity. The end user of the generated power is New Jersey Natural Gas. To the southeast of our site, there's a New Jersey Natural Gas facility that stores natural gas in a frozen form and releases it to their grid, so to speak, on an as-needed basis. This facility is an enormous user of electrical power. They use approximately 4.5 to 12 million kilowatt hours per year. That is an enormous power user for the area. They are going to be the net metered user of the power that's generated by these solar panels. So we are not going to be grid tied with this array system. It's going to be for one specific user. And the BPU rules for the one specific user, it's basically, we call it behind the meter connection, is that they don't allow a remote site. So if we had a site even across or a couple lots down that was completely cleared and we had availability to it, the BPU will not allow the net metered situation because it's not an adjacent property. So that is why we are on these 2 parcels here. Now, this dovetails into the need for the subdivision, as we show in the lower left corner of lot 17. The properties have to be directly adjacent. Now, yes, we have the Conrail right-of-way in between, but the way the law is written, the Conrail right-of-way is not a determining factor to having it not be called adjacent. So by subdividing a portion of lot 17 and giving it to lot 18, which is owned by the New Jersey Natural Gas Utility, we then create a situation where lots 27 and 28 are adjacent to lot 18, and we are therefore allowed to get the net metered array system to power the needs of the New Jersey Natural Gas site. So again, in a perfect world, would we be on a wooded site? No, but we are limited to what we can do as far as adding solar generation to this site. And this site, again, is a massive user of electricity. So in that, the applicant, we're proposing to install ground mount solar panel arrays on both tracks. Again, the system's slated to provide approximately 4.7 megawatts of power to the facility to the south. The proposed arrays will meet approximately 80% of the yearly load for that system. 1.5 megawatts will be provided by the west array, with the balance 3.2 megawatts being produced by the east array. Again, currently the existing natural gas facility consumes, at maximum 12 million kilowatt hours of electricity. That is very variable depending, again, on the weather. If we have a really cold winter and everyone's using their heat a lot more, they're going to need more storage and transfer and need for pumps, et cetera, to store this gas. So in a colder winter, they're going to be up on that high level. If we have a very mild winter, it'll be on that lower level. Again, we're not connecting to the grid. This is a net metered for one particular user. Access to each array is going to be via a gravel driveway off of Victory Road. Each driveway will have a concrete apron to transition from the township paved road to the gravel driveway. A 20-foot turf access road has been provided around and in between the array elements in accordance with correspondence with your emergency services. We do have fire approval at this point based on the changes we've made in the last several months in consultation with board professionals and fire and emergency services. For the fire access, we are providing gates with Knox boxes at their request. We are also providing gates at the southern portion of the access road at the request of the fire commissioners, just to allow them, just in case there's some sort of incident on the lots to our south and they need to use our access road to get vehicles to the offsite portions. The applicant will be applying, like I said, to NJDEP for general permit number 6 for filling portions of both isolated wetlands along Victory Road. And again, there's a valid LOI for those mapped wetlands. Our current plans that you have before you show a potential or a proposed buffer averaging in the lower or the southeast corner of lot 17, where we have that exceptional classified wetlands with the 150-foot buffer. During the plan changes we've done in the last few months, we've actually reduced the size of the array. And at this point, we are going to be removing that request for the buffer averaging, where we were going to reduce the buffer to 75 feet versus 150. So right now, our plans are calling for, they will call for, and our application is going to call for no buffer averaging in that exceptional resource value wetland in the southeast corner. So we will be honoring the entire 150-foot buffer. We will be, though, asking for, the wetlands fill for the areas along Victory Road. Again, we talked about the subdivision. That subdivision portion is only a 50-foot by approximately 188 feet parcel to be carved off. Lot 17 to be given to lot 18. Again, that's a technicality that we need in order to meet the BPU requirements of having an adjacent lot. On the overall, the array system will consist of a little bit over 11,000 individual solar panels, 7,500 on the east array and 3,600 on the west array. Each module or each panel, they're roughly 6.5 feet by 3.5 feet in size. They are wired together in what we call strings and tied to inverters that will be mounted to the supporting structure underneath. Once the electricity produced by the panels themselves is DC direct current, that goes to the inverter, and what that does, that converts direct current DC to alternating current AC. AC current is the current that everyone's familiar with in their home, and the codes are no different than they would be in any other commercial application for the AC power, going from the inverters to the switch gear, and that's going to be placed on a concrete pad adjacent to the access road at Victory Road. From the inverter, the electrical feeds go to the equipment pad, and once it goes from the equipment pad, we'll have an electrical feed that will run via buried conduit to a series of above-ground utility poles that will serve as the interconnect point with JCP&L to feed the New Jersey Natural Gas Facility. On the attached exhibit in the lower left corner of lot 17, where we are carving that piece off, you can see we are showing an underground conduit and then a series of utility poles that will then serve as the interconnection point to the New Jersey Natural Gas site.
Real quick,
Yes.
Let's go back to the arrays themselves.
Yes.
Okay, now what's the life expectancy of the arrays?
The panels themselves, the rule of thumb is 25 to 30 years useful life, but we've been seeing improvements in that on a almost monthly basis. So saying 30 to 40 years, if it's maintained properly and taken care of, is not unheard of. So that's what we're expecting as far as life expectancy.
And what happens if it doesn't reach that?
Well, if we have issues with individual panels, they can be fixed on an as-needed basis. The project and the system will have a telemetry system, which will give kind of real-time information to the operator, which will go down to the panel level of whether it's functioning or not. New Jersey Natural Gas is going to be investing quite a bit of money in this project, so they want this to last as long as possible. In the event that the times change or the applicant changes or they decide they don't need it, we do have a decommissioning plan. The decommissioning plan is essentially the panels get dismantled, they get taken off site and recycled. Almost every element within this system is recycled and has value, especially the panels themselves.
They are recycled.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very, very valuable commodity, everything that's in here, even down to the steel frames that will be holding it up. So it's
the panels themselves are recyclable.
Yes.
Okay.
So that, again, the plan is to have this 40 years plus. In the event that it cannot, there is a plan to dismantle and remove the elements from the site, then stabilize the site to whatever future use is decided by the current owner, or just to let it go to successional growth as has happened in the past with past uses on site. But everything will be, again, governed by township permitting processes, the Freehold Soil Conservation District for stabilization, et cetera. But that is something that is thought about, that is something that is planned for, and we have it presented a decommissioning plan to the board with our application as well.
And then I
Mr.
would,
Chair,
yeah, hang on just a second. I would like documentation on the recyclable
Sure.
aspect of this. I would like to know how they're doing that. 'Cause
Okay.
I've got a lot of companies that tell me that it's not there yet.
Okay, I've been told by whomever I work with that they are a recyclable element.
Okay, I would like to have that.
Yes.
So Mr. Chair, and to add on to that, I know this came up on other solar applications regarding, what does the township have to ensure that this decommissioning is going to happen 40 years from now? I think it's important for the board to know whether the applicant's willing to post any type of guarantee, in the form of a bond, to cover the cost of these removal and replacement, especially as properties can change hands over the course of 40 years. I think that's something that we need to hear from, the applicant and their attorney regarding that. And then also I'll let Sherry opine, but, obviously we're potentially losing 22 acres of forested wildlife habitat. And, once this gets removed and decommissioned 40 years from now, we're not going to overnight get 22 acres of fully mature vegetation. Whether the board is expecting anything other than letting the site naturally revegetate itself, or is expecting, replantings or something within that footprint, I think that's something that needs to be discussed with the board.
Yeah, and Mr. Cunliffe, I believe a bond would be acceptable, but we will respond to that formally. We're not going to finish tonight, so I just have to confer with my client. But we do have a lot more testimony to offer by Mr. Rosati that we need to get to as well.
That's fine. I just wanted to touch on it while it was, current discussion.
Understood. Chris, please continue.
Sure. Again, once the electricity gets converted to AC, it's basically constructed in accordance with all applicable codes. All safety measures and signage will be in accordance with the codes. The arrays themselves will be built on steel frames mounted to steel columns that will be placed in the ground. All panels are fixed in place. Detailed structural drawings and calculations obviously will be part of the building permit package should the board act favorably on the application. There will be a little additional impervious surface with the implementation of the proposed system. We will have small concrete equipment pads and driveway aprons and the gravel driveways. We are proposing DGA gravel driveways, so I don't want to call them a pervious surface because they're relatively impervious. But that is all we're talking about as far as the impervious surface is the pads themselves for the equipment and the driveways themselves. The drives throughout and on the perimeter of the arrays, and that's bisecting them here and there, as you can see on the exhibit, are going to be turf access roads, and that again was worked out with your fire department personnel.
So, Mr. Rosati, if I could just touch on that also, I just want to clarify, did you or anyone from your team reach out to DEP regarding it, depending on the amount of traffic or lack thereof of it being considered regulated motor vehicle surface or anything like that?
Yes, and we can supply. We had contact with members of DEP staff because that was a major question we had, and I know you had as well, as how we address our stormwater management. If that area it was seen as basically a travel way or a traffic surface, that would be addressed differently from a stormwater standpoint. So we were assured, based on the limited number of vehicle trips that will be on this on a yearly basis, it is not considered a traveled way and can be seen as just as a turf surface and not requiring any sort of additional water quality elements.
And as part of this application, should the board rule favorably, obviously the applicant's going to have to get outside agency approvals from DEP. They're going to review stormwater management and all that, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We will have, there'll be several bites at the stormwater apple, I'll call it. We have to go through your office with the Howell Zoning Board. We have to go to the Freehold Soil Conservation District, which reviews stormwater management, and also NJDEP for our general permit number 6 for the filling of the wetlands. And all those will trigger stormwater management review and assessment with regards to our being compliant with the current stormwater rules.
Okay, and then I know you mentioned to the panels themselves being fixed. So that's the anchor, they're anchored into the ground, but the panels themselves don't rotate on an axis to follow the direction of the sun, do they?
Correct. No, they're fixed in place and they have a fixed angle towards roughly the south, obviously, the southeast, and they do not rotate and follow the sun at all.
So, and then I know earlier, very early on in your testimony, you talked about the plan being modified to not encroach within the 150 foot, so you wouldn't be seeking a TAW permit. That's not what's currently shown on the plan, correct? That's going to be something that would have to be, revised as a condition of any approval, or should the board want to see it before they act favorably?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I just wanted to put it on record that we did recognize the importance of that 150-foot buffer, and that we were scaling back the array for other reasons, and that had the added benefit of not needing to having to request that relief from DEP, and it actually saves a little bit of tree clearing as well.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that's clear for the board that what's being shown isn't, you're obviously gonna have to make changes as any condition of approval or if the board wants to see it. And then the last piece of the clearing, so we said 22 acres. I see in the exhibit that's shown right now, there's a rectangular portion of the New Jersey natural gas property to the south. I think that's lot 18. That's
Yes.
shown to be cleared.
Yes.
Is that included in the 22 acres? And what is the purpose? of
Yes, that is included. So let's talk about the clearings. We have the calculation. So on lots 17 and 18, we have a total of 16.6 acres of clearing. On lots 27 and 28, we have 6.2 acres of clearing. So roughly 22 acres of total clearing. The clearing on the lot 18 is mostly for shading, shading effects that those trees will have on that southerly portion of the array. And I can get to it later because obviously from your tree expert has some issues with that. So just so you know, our intent is to be compliant with your tree ordinance to the effect of providing the monetary compensation for the tree removal as well as supplemental plantings to the various buffers that we're providing.
So just to
Can we
clarify
just stop?
first,
I'm sorry, can we just stop? If you're talking about buffering, let's talk about lot 2601. Right? That's a residential lot?
No, 2601.
2601.
I think it might
and
be.
Marion Ruan. Right there. Yes?
I will have to check because from what I saw in the field, that is.
That's irrelevant, what's in the field. It's what's on the tax records. It's a residential lot, which requires a 50-foot buffer in which you have a fence and a driveway.
Okay.
We do not allow.
So we will have to revise that to show that we will give the 50-foot buffer. Our intent is to comply with our buffering and not request any variances except for the technicality of the variance that we're not going to be able to provide either the berm or the fencing. And Jim Kyle, who's our planner, will get into that probably at the next meeting. But our intent is to leave the perimeter treed with the knowledge that we will have to supplement the plantings on the perimeter because being a somewhat mature treed area, the visual impact at the lower elevation is such that you need some enhancements for a true screening. So we are proposing to work with the licensed tree expert and T&M Associates to provide an adequate buffer of existing trees and supplemental trees as well.
So I have another question about that lot. It's not included in your 200-foot list. Why is that?
I will have to check it. The list was what we were given by the town and we'll have to check that.
Yeah, I would definitely do that because your cover sheet on your site plan shows the tax map, which clearly shows that lot. I understand that you're, legally only responsible to notice who was given to us, but the tax map shows that lot. You're showing it on your plans here. So that's definitely something that we're gonna need clarified before you come back. I'm guessing that based upon the way this is laid out now, you're gonna lose some panels to comply with that 50-foot buffer and provide that circulation drive around. I would submit though that we're gonna be looking for some plantings of some form along that perimeter. If that is in fact a residence, and that may require you to push the panels farther away.
Understood.
In order to allow for, the whole purpose of the buffer is to protect the residents. So, that may have to be adjusted before you come back.
Yes.
Okay.
And Jen, this is Sal. As it relates to that lot, we'll check with the assessor and see why it wasn't on the list, and we'll make sure that we notice that property owner.
Yeah, I understand what the issue is, but if you look on the tax map on the cover sheet of the site plan, it's shown as lot 2601. So I'm not sure what the situation is, whether it was consolidated with something else or not. But it's definitely something that we want to make sure that we resolve prior to this concluding in whatever way it is going to conclude. And if it is in fact a residence, then that requires that 50-foot buffer.
Understood.
Sal, that might be the residentially zoned portion of the K10 property that was before the board that got use variance approval.
Yeah, but that's 2602, Charlie. That's listed in their tax, in their
Did they,
property owners list is 2602.
they consolidate that as a condition of the use variance approval?
I don't know.
We'll look.
That
I'll
could be, that might be an old lot designation, so just to look into.
We'll look with the assessor, and we'll also check our tax records ourselves.
So, and to get back to my original question, what I was asking about is if, I don't know who's controlling the screen, if you can slide to the right here. There's a 1.43 acre clearing on lot 18. Is that solely for shading purposes? Is there something proposed there in the
Yeah,
future?
no improvements are proposed there at this time.
Is it for shading purposes or?
Yes,
or
it's for shading.
Okay, all right.
Chris, can you talk about the buffer along the road? I had commented in my letter about, I wasn't sure if you're proposing a certain amount of trees based on the replacement calculations.
Yeah, that's where we're, like I said, our intent is to satisfy the ordinance as much as we can, where we are prepared to pay the fee on a per acre basis for removal, knowing that we also want to do some supplemental plantings along that area. And in my opinion, greater than the 54 that are noted on our landscape plan.
Right.
So my testimony is we will work with you and T&M to put whatever we think is necessary in that buffer. And then I would be, again, just some sort of credit from the payment that we're making, which is quite substantial. We're looking at 22 acres of tree clearing at $35,000 per acre in fee. We're in the order of over $800,000. So, and I think we get what, $150 credit per tree off that or something. So we will basically want to do a hybrid of both, because we, recognizing that, a 40-foot tall tree in woods doesn't have much vegetation, from 0 to say maybe 20 feet. So we want to provide that 4-season buffer where we can with, understory plantings, evergreens, et cetera, along that buffer to kind of hide the array from the passing public.
Okay. Well, I have you. Can you talk about in my letter some of the other options that you can do on site? I know the easiest one probably would be if you could seed the entire site with pollinator friendly seed mix. Is that something that you can do?
Yeah, we don't have a problem with that. We can work it with you, or I can put our landscape architect in touch. The other items, quite frankly, are a little bit more difficult because they require the operator and owner coming into some sort of agreement with a third party. That would be like the agrivoltaics or pasture use for grazing animals.
Right.
That's just kind of a difficult thing. And the agrivoltaics is fairly new. We actually have a project, it's our first one that we're bidding on right now that will be agrivoltaics.
Oh, that's
and it's a new term for us as of about 2 months ago. But I just think for this, it's going to be a little bit difficult to coordinate all the parties. We have New Jersey Natural Gas as the recipient, IPP Solar as the operator, et cetera. So getting another element in there, I think is difficult. And then we would also have to raise the arrays even higher.
Yeah.
To get activity underneath. So we're trying to be as low as we can to be as unobtrusive as we can. But as far as the pollinator species, we don't have a problem with that.
Okay. And also just looking from Google Street View, you could see overall the woods along the road are not bad. There are some invasives in there. So,
yes,
I'd like to get those out of there and then you could fill in.
Understood. Yes. Yeah. All the ailanthus will go, we promise. And I saw the other one was
locust.
Yeah. Yes. And we will do that. Absolutely.
Now, Chris, the solar panels themselves, they're not considered impervious, is that correct?
That's correct. Under land use law, they are not considered impervious. They are attached to the array in such a way that they're not, that basically the rainwater drips off them between each panel and then to the ground below. It's not this giant wall of impervious where the water's going to sheet off from top to bottom and impact the ground. It drips down in between each panel. That also is the same as far as snow melt as well. So again, the only impervious from a stormwater standpoint is, like I said, the equipment pads and the driveway access points. As far as weather effects, the panels are typically about 20 degrees warmer than ambient. So they do allow for snow melt a little bit quicker. So you don't typically have these sheets of ice or whatever falling off the array. And again, these are ground mounts, not a carport. So that's really not as great of a concern. But that's just something we talk about pretty much as a general rule. Again, we talked about the useful life, about 30 to 30 years plus. Another question we get asked a lot is the reflectivity of the array elements. People are worried that the glare is going to come off and be an annoyance. These materials are very light absorptive. The last thing we want to do is reflect sunlight. We want to grab as much as we can for efficiency. So the reflectivity is only about 4%. So that's basically analogous to green leaves on trees. They're light reflected off that. So they're a very non-reflective surface because any reflected light is lost light for us to generate power.
Did the applicant do any analysis to see if the solar array complies with any FAA regulations regarding flight patterns or anything like that from a light reflectivity perspective?
Not to my knowledge. We will have to circle back to that with further testimony, but we will find out. As far as sound, the only elements that will generate any sort of noise, quote unquote, is the switch gear and at the equipment panels. The noise generated by those is analogous to a window air conditioner in your home. So at any appreciable distance, you won't even hear it. So we will be fully compliant with any sort of noise ordinance with the town, especially at the property boundary, especially given at the property boundary, we will have tree coverage and buffering. Maintenance and equipment checks are typically done in the beginning a little bit more frequently as we get the site dialed in, but then it will be on the order of once a year for an annual check, and then on an as needed basis for elements like I talked about before, like a panel being out or maybe a whole string not performing 100%. So then a technician will come out to the site. You're looking at maybe once or twice a month. So 12 to 24 trips per year to the site. And those technicians will come to the site in like a small service van, nothing heavy. And again, it would just be, a technician doing some diagnostic work. Worst case scenario would be removing a panel and replacing it. There will be, again, a telemetry system. That's how they will know when there's problems. Again, there's a huge investment of money in this project. So the last thing they want is a sub-performing array. So they will know almost on a minute-by-minute basis how the elements are performing. And should they fall below certain criteria, they will go out and investigate what the issues are. The vegetation will be cut approximately every 4 to 6 weeks during the growing season. Again, that's variable depending on what kind of rain we get. If we have a really hot, dry summer, you're not going to need as many cuts versus if we have a real wet summer.
Chris, just to interrupt you on that, if you guys are going to put down a pollinator seed mix, the maintenance would be different on that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, we will work with you guys on that. I saw that in your letter as well. I forgot to touch on that. So that'll be something that we will have to work at, and we'll have a specific, maintenance plan for that area.
Well, the question I have on that as a follow-up is if we're going to plant something that requires more maintenance, how often is that maintenance and what kind of equipment is required?
Probably, I mean, less maintenance somewhere.
Oh, less maintenance. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to make sure the grassed areas are not more traffic and now it's motor vehicle surface.
No.
Right, and then again, it would, yeah, and we would have to keep that access road as turf, but everything else we can do that pollinator species. The west array we're looking at providing 2.1 million kilowatt hours per year. The east array, 4.8 million kilowatts per year for a total of 6.9 million kilowatt hours per year. There was a discussion in the shade tree report regarding the carbon footprint, so to speak, the carbon sequestration of the treed area and the 1,700 trees, some odd that were estimated to be removed. And they equate that to pounds of carbon dioxide being absorbed. The 6.9 million kilowatt hours that were going to be generated, we looked at there's an available to the public EPA, like I'll call it an impact calculator. If you put in an electrical demand or an electrical element to that, it equates it to various items that we can give a value to. So the 6.9 million kilowatt hours is roughly 4,800 metric tons of carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions. It's a huge amount. It, again, going by the EPA produced analysis, that equates to roughly 33 acres of forest preserved, and that would be on an annual basis. Just to give a basis of comparison, yes, we are taking some trees down, but the power generated by this array will counter that several times over on an annual basis.
And Chris, that doesn't include the replantings that the town can make with the $800,000 or so that's being contributed.
That is correct. So that's just a comparison of the tree loss to the power generated on a carbon dioxide comparison level.
But you're not putting the power back into the grid. You're giving the power directly to the gas company, correct?
That is correct, but that makes so the gas company doesn't have to take that power from the grid. So yes, if the end user uses it, but instead of taking it from the grid, they take it from the array.
So Chris, two follow-up questions to that. So you indicated you use the EPA, I guess it's like a website, open source, where you can just put the inputs. Would you give a printout of what the inputs you did and all that, just for the board's records cited? And then the second question I have is, so the 6,900 kilowatt hours that you're providing to the gas company, is that a continuous free flow of energy, or is there any type of systems that are going to be required to regulate or store any of that energy for the natural gas use throughout the year?
Yeah, there's not going to be any storage or any battery storage. It's basically, it's no different than of course, though, on a much larger scale, the systems that you would have on your home. When you're using the electricity, it powers your house. When you're not, it goes to the grid, but it's net metered, and that's we are not allowed to produce more than 110% of our annual load, so we don't become a producer, because then once you're a producer, you have much different rules to follow, as you know, because you've done, there's elements in Howell where they are a grid tied system where we are not. But again, that the site uses almost 12 million kilowatt hours per year, and we are only hitting 80% of their normal load. We are well under that requirement. So there is no storage, but the site is such a huge consumer. I don't see an issue where we're going to be sending a massive amount of electricity to the grid.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So Chris, question for you.
Yes.
You know, when I see something like this, I think that this is legacy antiquated type systems, right? Because I'm into the vanadium redox flow batteries and stuff like that, where we reduce the footprint of the solar array to a minimal amount. We load up the batteries. We get 6 hours, 6 hours, 6 hours, 6 hours, 5 batteries. We go around the clock. We produce the megawatts that we need for an end user. We're talking about an end user here. So the design for me is not necessarily, you know, looking like something that I would want to see from the type of work that I normally do. Over.
Well, I'm not an electrical engineer, so I don't know how to answer that I'm just letting you know that there is no plan for a battery storage system for this facility. Obviously, there was issues why. We can have that again. We're not going to be done tonight. I think that's obvious. We can look into that and have answers as to why it's not a battery storage system. This is typical from what we've been doing currently over the last few years, and we have several in other towns going on that we are not doing battery storage. I only have done one with battery storage in Plainsboro, so that is kind of a unique one. But again, there is a reason why, and we can get that for you for further testimony.
All right, so that's what I'm looking at. Where's the renewable energy storage market, you know, batteries? I'm not talking about just any battery. I'm talking about the redox flow batteries, the vanadiums. So just so I'm clear. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Sherry, I have a quick question for you, please.
Sure.
Yeah, what is the existing trees there right now and the size? Just to get an idea how many hazard trees are mixed in? Or is this
It really overall did not look bad. I did not go into the site, but just from along the road, you know, I noticed a couple of lanthus, a few locusts, but overall it's a typical, you know, roadside site. You know, most of it was native.
Okay.
Yeah, interior to they're somewhat unique, each side of that railroad right of way. On the large track, lot 17, it's a little more sparse. I think that was due to the previous activity. Again, previous activity, we're going back to 1940, 1950. However, there are some trees that are, you know, some oak trees that I saw in there that are appreciable size. But the bulk of the other vegetation I saw in there is on the order of, say, 6 to 12 inch in size.
Right.
On the opposite side of the right of way, it's like a mixed pitch pine and oak. I'm not really up on my individual oak identification.
Yeah, but it's a lot of pine. It looks real different on an aerial view.
Yeah, there's a lot of pine on that lots 27 and 28. A lot of pitch pines in that area. It definitely is. They are two unique parcels from a tree perspective.
Yeah, and Chris, to follow up, one thing I was just concerned about, you do have that area, the shaded area for the gas company on the southeast or the southern portion in that one lot, the rectangular lot, but the rest is all wood lines, right? If you're looking to the east.
Yes.
Okay. I know that this is not going to be a, you know, it is once in the, you know, it may happen or may not, but if there was a fire issue and you're looking at a, you know, time of the year where you have red flag warnings and you have a gas company right to the south, is there a little bit of a safety concern here?
Well, around the gas company, they're cleared a decent distance around all their facilities. And we are providing the access road through our site towards that rear at the request of your fire department. I think he had the same thought you did. How can you get back there? So that's why we have gates in and out along that right-of-way area. But as far as the gas site itself, again, next time we'll have the color rendering and the colored aerial photo that you can see our array proximate to the gas company facility. And the gas company facility has a very large area clear around it.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
Chris, continue, Chris, please.
Okay, what I can do is, I can continue to the T and M review letter. What I can say predominantly is we agree with the bulk of the June 27th, 2021 letter. I'm sorry, June 27th letter revised November 3rd, 2021. I can touch on some individual elements. The first items I want to touch on are the waivers that we're going to be requesting. Jim Kyle will do some of the waivers, but I'll do the more technical ones from an engineering standpoint. If you look towards sheet 5 of the letter, waivers requested, checklist item 16, we are requesting a waiver for a traffic report. As I testified, we're looking at 12 to 24 trips per year. So we are requesting a waiver for a traffic report, as we see that as definitely de minimis and have zero impact on the travel ways of Victory Road and the surrounding area. Checklist item 17, written descriptions and meets and bounds. Right now, we're not proposing any sort of easement or anything that would require that. Should we need to, of course, we will do it, but right now it's not applicable. Checklist item 20 is architectural and floor plans. Again, that's something that's not applicable to this application, so we are requesting that waiver. Something a little bit more important, checklist item 60, the 2,000-foot downstream analysis.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? This application was deemed complete, was it not? Otherwise, we
Yes.
wouldn't have even started. So I think when we're talking waivers, I mean, these are submission waivers. These are not design waivers. So if you're deemed complete, obviously the board has issued submission waivers. So probably we should talk about design waivers, which are pertinent to the public hearing, not pertinent to completeness.
Right, that's where you are now, Jim. I mean, Chris, the 2,000-foot downstream.
Yes. So we are working with your engineer. We have worked with him over the last several months on stormwater management. As you know, we have somewhat new stormwater rules. They were made in effect March of 2021. There were several questions, as we talked about already, like how do we treat that turf access way? Is it a traveled way? Is it a road? So we're going back and forth with your engineer, and we feel we are going to satisfy his concerns with respect to stormwater management. Again, we also get reviewed by Freehold Soil Conservation District and the NJDEP. So in our minds, we're going to be self-contained from a stormwater management standpoint. Yes, we are removing trees, but we are replacing it with sort of a low impact from a stormwater management standpoint, ground cover. And we will be ameliorating the stormwater flows on site with several areas of sump and some sort of recharge. And we are, again, working with your engineer, and we again will work with and get reviewed by other outside agencies. So we feel that we're kind of self-contained, that 2,000-foot downstream analysis is something that the board can act on as far as a waiver.
So Chris, I want to touch on that while we're there. So as part of the stormwater management comments, I know there's several basins that are proposed throughout the site. One of them is a quote unquote sump that's being constructed on top of the existing isolated wetlands along the north side of the lot. I think it's 28.
Yes.
The BMP doesn't indicate any type of green infrastructure BMP as a sump. So what exactly is being proposed there so that the board knows what they're reviewing and approving?
Yeah, we're in discussions internally about revising that a little bit and moving it. We are allowed a sump without any.
What is this? What's a sump?
A sump is a depressed area that will collect stormwater runoff, so it's not free flowing off-site onto an adjacent property.
So which one of this green infrastructure BMPs is that in the new stormwater management regulations?
I honestly, I don't remember the specific number, but it's one that we've gotten approved in other elements and other sites. So again, we will, our intent is to be fully compliant. And again, we'll work with your office on satisfying your concerns.
So what I'll say, Mr. Chair, and I indicated in my report, obviously I need to see more details on it. Any approval for this site is going to be conditioned on DEP. They're also going to review stormwater management. Like if the board's going to rule favorably on this, without hearing more testimony or weigh in on how DEP is going to look at that, I don't know that I could recommend the board reviews this for granting of a final approval, just because, if
Well, and
that's
let's not forget too, Charlie, this is a use variance application. So, this is not just a traditional site plan where a lot of things can be conditioned. The impacts associated with the application get weighed as opposed to whether or not a use variance that, the criteria has been met. So my recommendation is that these things need to get worked out before the board can even entertain a use variance application.
Yeah, I mean, there's several other basins throughout the site that are just indicated as sump, and there's no detail of whether it's got a 6-inch sand bottom or what, and obviously DEP is going to review it also, but we need to know what, as Jen said, what we're reviewing and approving from the board's perspective.
Understood. Again, knowing that we're going to be back here. In the meantime, we will have anything that you're raising, and we'll address those concerns.
So as part of that, I just ask you also to investigate the drainage structure on Victory Road, which your basin is discharging to. That's an existing low point, I think, on Victory Road. So, obviously, you can design a site to meet your rate reductions to that point of analysis, but in an event that your basin fails, what does that do downstream, especially at a low point? Are you flooding the road? Are you flooding the property across the street? I think the board needs to know what the impact of the site development is there.
Understood.
Also, what about species, endangered species, or?
There's something about an environmentalist, right? That's going to talk about
Yes,
that.
yeah. I don't want to. The only thing I can say to that is the endangered species are the reason why we have that 150-foot buffer on the southeast corner of lot 17, and we are honoring that 150-foot buffer. But again, Kyle from Trident will be talking about that, and we can address the T&E issue on that at that time. If we can continue on the technical waivers, solar generation facilities within regulated areas, that again would be the proposed filled wetlands. That's somewhat of a technicality, because if we get a general permit number 6 to fill those wetlands, they are no longer a regulated area. So again, we're requesting the waiver at this time, subject to DEP approval. And again, in looking at an alternate method, we may be actually changing where we're showing some stormwater management in that area. Again, because we're looking at based on the letter and the review comments. But again, that's a waiver that we're requesting because we are essentially filling the wetland and putting the solar on top of an eventual unregulated area. Going to sidewalks on the right-of-way and private. We are not proposing any sidewalks along Victory Road. There are no sidewalks in the vicinity along Victory Road, so we're trying to keep the same character, and it would be essentially a sidewalk for nobody, because there's no other connection to any sidewalk, either east or west. So that would be for private and along the right-of-way.
So Chris, as it relates to sidewalks, if the board were to grant that waiver, the applicant would have to make a contribution in lieu of installation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Okay, and then pavement section for light traffic areas. Again, we talked about the frequency of the proposed traffic and that the area is not considered a traffic site. We have consulted with the Fire Bureau, and they are okay with what we propose. We actually have a statement from them that they have no objection to the site plan at this time. Going forward with the November 3rd, 2021 letter, we talked about site visits. Days and hours that the site would be visited for operation and maintenance. It'd be during normal business hours, nothing at night. There's nothing that unless there's some sort of true emergency, it would all be during the day if we get telemetry notice that something needs maintenance or attention. Again, type in vehicles we talked about is the small service van. We talked about the noise. Other than that, I think that's everything else. Again, we are confident we can work out with your engineer. There are things that are relatively technical in nature. I don't know if you want to talk about specific stormwater
Chris.
management elements at this time.
Chris, I have a few follow-ups before you do
Sure.
that. Number one is, there's no signage proposed.
The only, I'm sorry, yeah, the only signage we're proposing is basically notice signage on the entrance gates. You know, just to notice the public that this is a solar area. Please don't come and play in here because it's not a playground. But there's no site identification sign or anything of that nature. It's merely just for safety and code compliance.
And then, and the site lighting, also nothing proposed.
No site lighting proposed.
There was a comment in Charlie's report about the fence height. And you
Yes.
raised, can you just respond to those comments?
We are proposing a 7-foot high fence to surround the entire property. Should the board think an 8-foot fence is more appropriate, we'll have to talk with the applicant and let you know. But in our estimation, a 6 to 7-foot fence is typical and common for such a use.
And going back to, well, we don't need the plan in front of us, but I just wanted to clarify the zoning aspects. And obviously, Mr. Kyle will get into that in more detail, but the easternmost property, which is in the SED zone, warehousing and manufacturing are obviously permitted uses in that zone, as are utilities. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then on the western property, which is the ARE6, the solar facility would be conditional use, and we don't meet the conditions, but it is a conditional use in the ARE6 zone.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, and Mr. Kyle will get into the standards, that the conditional use standards when we get to him. And then I believe the only other follow-up was Jennifer issued a report, and I'm not sure if there are any technical comments in there that we need to discuss before I turn it over to the board for questions.
There's only one question, which is, and I don't know if you're the right person, but I'm gonna ask you anyway, is that there's a requirement that the maximum height of the facility in the residential zone be 15 feet. Do you know what the max height of these panels are gonna be?
Yeah, just give me a minute. We're approximately 8 feet, so I would say no higher than 10.
Okay, that's the only technical comment that I had, so.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Chris, I believe you covered everything I had on my list. If you don't have anything else, I'm going to defer to the board for additional questions.
Board members, any?
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So, for Charlie, first off, Charlie, sidewalk. We got to start somewhere, right? The township, begins and ends with installing sidewalks. Is Victory Road one that really requires one?
Obviously, I know the governing body and the municipality is reevaluating their master plan as far as like the circulation element and things like that. Potentially could that be one of the recommendations as part of that reexamination? I don't know. I can tell you the Victory, the lot 28 portion of the lot is across the street from an industrial use with where they steal steel girders and all that kind of stuff. I don't see necessarily people walking down the street and utilizing the sidewalk there. Having said that, west of the railroad tracks is a residential zone. There are residential properties. I'm looking at Google Earth available aerial imagery. It doesn't look like there's sidewalks there. I mean, either way, whether you want them or whether you don't want them, it's up to your discretion. The applicant has agreed to make contribution in lieu of that. So, if you don't want them, potentially the town can install them somewhere where they might be more appropriate, finishing or connecting to sidewalk, sidewalk to nowhere kind of thing. So.
Got it. Okay, and then Chris?
Yes.
For you, micro turbines as well, marry up well with small solar arrays and redux batteries. I'm hoping that you're going to have something for us when you get back.
Again, hopefully we will. I'm not an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer. I'm civil site, but we will present that to our applicant and hopefully have a response.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Mr. Chair.
Any other board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as a resident of Howell, and I'm sure there's some of my neighbors that are listening in on this call, how would you feel that I'm concerned that this doesn't benefit Howell Township very much. You're taking out an enormous amount of trees. So how would you answer the question of the residents of how this benefits us?
That's probably more of a planning testimony that our planner will discuss.
That's fair. Then keep it in mind to address it as we move down the road, so that I, as well as my neighbors, can be satisfied in that.
Understood.
Understood.
Any other questions from the board?
I'm going to follow up with a question with the planner once we hear their testimony, because what Mr. Cantor said, I was kind of in the same wavelength as far as I have a planning issue with it. So I'll wait for that, the planner.
Any other?
Yeah, I might have one. This may be inappropriate time too, and I'm happy to kick it down until someone pops up. But I'd be curious. I know we have a couple of different zones involved here. I'd just like to get a comparison as to what else could be in those zones besides obviously us trying to maybe approving this. I don't know if that's an answer now or later, but I'd like that addressed if possible.
Well, we did discuss that with our planner, and he will comment on that. We do know what the permitted uses are in each of the zones, and obviously the SED zone is warehousing and manufacturing, and it's the larger of the two tracts. But our planner will discuss that. We haven't done a site plan to show you how many hundreds of thousands of square feet could be developed there, but we do know it could be significant development.
Okay, yeah, just in general, I'm just looking for, just so I can make some comparisons in my head, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other from the board? I'm withholding my questions until later meeting here. Okay.
If we can call Mr. Weiss, his testimony will be a lot more brief than Chris Rosati's testimony.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. And I'm sorry, I always mispronounce your name. So how do you say your last name?
It's Weesey.
Weesey, sorry.
No, whole life, don't worry about it.
Okay, and I'm going to call you Kyle. We're seeking to have you qualified as an environmental expert. Can you advise the board by whom you're employed and what your professional credentials are, please?
Yeah, so I'm with Trident Environmental. I'm Director of Land Use Services for Trident. I've been with Trident for 19 plus years. My education is a BS Environmental Science from Western New England College. As a employee here at Trident for the last 19 years, I've prepared and submitted numerous EISs for townships throughout Ocean County and Monmouth County. As also along other responsibilities are preparing NJDEP permits, freshwater wetlands, CAFRA, waterfront development, tidelands, pineland submissions, applications, certificate of filing. Along with numerous other permits and duties here. Also been involved with preparing and getting approved mitigation banks. There's one in Howell that I helped get approved. Also, which is the Marsh Bog Brook mitigation banks. Along with that, also have assisted over the years and helped participate and prepare and set up threatened endangered species surveys for pine barrens, tree frog, pine snake, barred owl, bob turtles. I've also provided expert testimony for planning boards for Upper Freehold, Lakewood Township, zoning boards for Neptune Township, and also environmental commissions for Howell Township and Freehold Township.
We accept your credentials, sir.
And Trident prepared what has been marked as A4, which is the Natural Resource Inventory Report dated May 11th, 2021, and A7, the Environmental Impact Report prepared by your office dated September 29th, 2021. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and can you summarize for the board what you did, or you and Trident did to prepare those reports and what your conclusions were?
So in preparing a report, so what we typically do is, and we did for this site, is we review any NJDEP databases, GeoWeb, any available information as far as the mapping is concerned, soil data mart as far as soils on site, review site plans and review with the Mr. Rosati, Chris Rosati, review the site and the engineering drawings, along with making site visits to verify, desktop data that we got from GeoWeb, and to also enhance our report and make our decisions on the report. Our report, Mr. Rosati did a great job of summarizing a lot of things in here. Ultimately, the site is a wooded forested site. Lot 17 is historically was disturbed. A large majority of the site up until probably about 1984 has more of a mid successional growth. The other two lots are a little more grown up, have a bigger diameter trees and is forested. So the entire site in general is forested. There are three, I'll call them three wetland areas that are located on lot 17. Two of them are smaller isolated areas by Victory Road. There's a second wetland area that's located partially on site on the southeast portion of the site and mostly off site. So review of the site, obviously impacts to the site, major impact that the development of the site's going to have is removal of vegetation. We're going to be removing vegetation and wildlife habitat. Again, the removal of that habitat is going to be somewhat offset in the project as far as what's being proposed in solar panels and not something else as far as a commercial use that could go there. The wildlife habitat that will be removed, it is part of an existing habitat patch, 200 plus acres that exists to the south and a little bit to the east around the New Jersey natural gas facility. So even though the site will be impacting some wildlife habitat and removing trees, there is additional habitat for these animals using the area to move on to and continue on. As far as other impacts, the wetlands, we will be impacting two small wetlands up front. We have a valid LOI that was issued by the DEP. The LOI is considered them to be isolated, so we will be submitting a general permit number 6 to fill these wetlands. As far as other impacts, noise levels, traffic, air quality, there doesn't seem to be any, there will be impacts to the site. Obviously, we're taking trees and putting the development there. As far as any adverse impacts to the surrounding area, there's, was determined to be minimal impacts. Noise level, as Mr. Rosati said, regarding the noise from the array. Air quality, there is not going to be any significant contributors to the air that we're expecting. And regarding traffic, trips to the site, this isn't a commercial development, solar, so there is no increase to traffic or infrastructure to Victory Road.
There are comments within the T&M report relating to the natural resource inventory, and then also relating to the environmental impact statement. And have you addressed those comments through your testimony, and are further plan or report revisions required to address them?
With regarding, so back to the letter with regarding the NRI.
28.
Yep, number 20. Yeah, they're requiring, so we would have to, comply with the request and supply additional information regarding site conditions.
Chris, has the applicant prepared any permits to DEP for the general permit 6? Is that in the process of being done, or has it been submitted?
Yeah, so the NJDEP permit for the general permits has been submitted. It was submitted on Friday. So we are currently in. I unfortunately don't have a file number for you, but that was submitted and is currently being processed. It's currently in the 20-day technical review, or not technical, administrative review, sorry.
Would you agree to provide a copy of that to the board and to Mr. Conliffe?
Yes.
And then just to clarify, so you said you got an LOI and indicated the 2 isolated wetlands. Do the LOI also include the wetlands at the southeast portion of the property, which I guess have the 150-foot buffer?
Yes. So the LOI, we did not prepare the LOI. The LOI was received by the applicant and another consultant. But the LOI does give a resource classification for the wetlands up by Victory Road and the wetland in the southeast.
And that's the 150-foot buffer on the latter location, correct?
Yeah, so the area in the southeast was considered an exceptional resource. Was given a 150-foot buffer. Mainly it's given a 150-foot buffer. The reason it's given a 150-foot buffer is typically they consider it to be threatened and endangered species habitat. The area up to the 2 wetland areas, Victory Road, we're getting intermediate resource. Typically an intermediate resource denotes that they don't believe it to be threatened and endangered species habitat, which would give it a normal, intermediate resources is typical of wetlands, wetland buffer, a 50-foot buffer.
So, and then I don't know if, just I'm speaking off the top of my head, I don't know if it's the NRR or the EIS, but I believe there's a statement that there's potential vernal wetlands habitat on the site. Is that associated with the wetlands at the southeast or the 2 isolated along the north part of the property?
So the potential burning, so the NJDEP, the GeoWeb does map off-site potential habitat to the south. It's not mapped currently on our site. It is associated with that southeast wetland that does creep onto the to our site, which is lot 17 there in the southeast. The other 2 areas has been reviewed by DEP, and it's my understanding, was not given vernal habitat designation.
Okay, so the only vernal potential is the one at the southeast, which you're not disturbing, and then in accordance with Mr. Rosati's testimony, you're going to revise, the applicant is going to revise the plans to comply with the 150-foot buffer, not require any buffer averaging, permits or anything like that.
Correct. Yeah. No disturbance is going to take place within the buffer or the wetlands for that exceptional resource.
Okay. Now the NRI talks about the NJDP digital GIS landscape project data, mapping it for pine barren tree frog, and I think there was another threatened and endangered species. Did you guys do any T&E study? Is that something that's going to be required, part of the GP6, or would that only be triggered as part of a TAW permit? What's the status of that?
Yeah, so it's twofold, right? The site has had an LOI review by the DEP. The DEP has been out there multiple times to review the area for T&E threatened and endangered species. Survey wise, no, there is no requirement when it comes to a GP6. That review will be done by the Fish and Wildlife at DEP. So any survey or anything that we would prepare and submit would ultimately be reviewed by Fish and Wildlife. So as we're essentially going to get that review when we put in that, we already have put in the general permit number 6, DEP will review it for threatened and endangered species habitat.
Okay, and then as part of their review, do they put in certain mitigation requirements on the applicant's end for disturbing habitat, or what's the typical outcome of something like that when there's threatened endangered species on a site?
So the area, so the area that's been deemed to have potential habitat is the area to the southeast, which we're not touching and not in a permit for. That area won't be reviewed. We won't be in for that. We're not going to be touching it or have a review. The two areas that will be reviewed is the Victory Road wetlands, the two wetlands up there, the small isolated area. We're going in for a general permit 6, which is a fill permit for an isolated wetland. You typically, you can't fill very many wetlands in New Jersey these days. It either has to be a freshwater individual permit, which usually allows a small amount, or a general permit 6 because it's considered isolated and not a water of the United States.
So they're going to do as part of the GP6, they're going to review for impact to T&E, or they're
Yes.
not? They are.
They will
Okay.
review, yes.
Okay. All right. You can continue if you want to keep addressing stuff in my letter. You hit most of the NRI stuff that I asked about.
Right, and then paragraph 34, I believe, is your EIS. Kyle.
Yes, the 34 for the EIS, yeah, the LOI file number, yeah, we can add that and provide that. That's not an issue. And then I think this goes back to the so 34B, which regarding the threatened endangered species, note should be revised that the entire site is identified as pine barrens tree frog habitat. Technically, that is correct. The landscape project mapping does identify the whole site as a pine barrens tree frog habitat, so we can revise the EIS to reflect that.
So I guess for the board's perspective, right? So you're clearing, or the applicant's proposing to clear 22 acres of wooded vegetation. So, in your professional experience, when an applicant that's filling an isolated wetlands is clearing 22 acres, what kind of conditions does the DEP, or what do they require, on their end for an applicant to clear 22 acres of wooded vegetation that has potential T&E habitat on it?
Well, the review for the DEP is going to be limited to the wetland area, wetland and buffer areas, the regulated areas that DEP regulates. As far as the 22 acres that are going to be cleared, there is no review by the DEP on that.
So there could be T&E species and habitat through the remainder of that 22 acres that isn't encumbered by the wetlands and the 50-foot buffer on the site.
No, so as far as the pine barrens tree frog, the critical habitat is the vernal pool breeding habitat. That's critical habitat that's protected. That's the habitat that's regulated by DEP. As far as the upland area, when it comes to pine barrens tree frog, being a T&E habitat, no, that wouldn't be a review.
How about the other species? Wasn't there two?
What other species?
I thought there was 2 species in the report. There was the frog, and wasn't there another one, or am I speaking out of turn? Pine barren. So there's okay. Is it just the tree frog that was encountered?
That's mapped, yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. And that's part of my recommendation to the board, why I recommended only preliminary. There are, wetlands and environmental constraints on the site. I'd like to see, from a board's perspective, more input from DEP on what's being proposed, just so we know if there does need to be significant site changes, or they do take issues with, filling a isolated wetlands. I think the board needs to see what impact that does to the site. So that's all I have for Mr. Weese. Sorry.
And Mr. Chair, you're frozen. There you are.
Yeah,
So, that in hearing what Charlie's saying, that's why I think going a little more green would probably, be more palatable in looking at the overall construct of what's being proposed here. The capstone microgrid, micro turbines with a couple of batteries, and reduce the footprint, protect the species, et cetera. That's all.
I'm breaking in and out, guys. Nope.
We hear you.
Yeah, I'm in and out though.
Well, Mr. Chair, if it's too late to start any additional witnesses tonight for, if the board doesn't have any other questions, we would agree to come back at the next available meeting to finish our presentation.
Okay. Charlie, you got everything you need for them to come back?
And this is just as a kind of catch-all, I just, with the stormwater management, obviously I outlined a number of items in my letter, Sal, would like to see those, if as best as possible, rectified before you come back to the board. Obviously within reason. We had questions regarding drain down times for a lot of these supplemental basins that were provided. I don't know what the time frame is for the applicant. Some of that stuff requires test pits and infiltration tests, but as far as like some of the questions regarding where you are with status with permits and then, with the, impact to Victory Road, that drainage crossing, I think those things can be vetted out before you come back to the board.
Jennifer?
Right.
I just need you to clarify that buffer situation that's on the that lot 2601 that's shown on the plans in the tax map, and whether or not that residential buffer will be required along that property line.
Yes, we will.
Sherry? You're muted, Sherry. There you go.
I wouldn't mind doing having a field visit out there, but I don't think we're at that point yet. If the board does grant use variance, then maybe I just don't want to have a completely open-ended number of how many trees we think we're going to put in. If it's really full in that buffer, we're not going to be able to fit 200 trees. So I would like to do a field visit if they're successful getting the use variance.
Okay. Eileen?
Mr. Chair, can I just take the temperature of the board and see if anybody, speaking of field visits, or anybody needs to go see this, or is everybody familiar with this area?
You got 22 acres.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, pack a bag there, Matt.
I'll bring my RV,
And some of it's wetlands, so
It's totally up to you. I will not discourage a site visit. It'd be totally up to the site visit.
Reach out, Matt. I'll join you.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll send an email tomorrow and see who would like to go see it. Because I know some people are probably familiar with it, but I'm personally not. So
Just no more than 2 people at a time.
correct. All right. Thank you.
If you've got you're allowed with your committee, but just all the board members, don't get everybody at one time.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, we have another one on the books we're trying to do too. So, but okay, yeah, I'll take everybody's temperature and then we can let you know next meeting.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Eileen?
Okay, December 6th has 4 applications already on it. December 13th has 2.
We
And
would,
that's the only dates we have right now.
right, let us take the December 13th date if we can, and then hopefully we'll be ready with a lot of the questions that were asked tonight. And if not, we'll advise you in advance.
That's fine, because by then I may have dates as well.
Okay. So, Mr. Tropoli, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that's your job. You want to?
So December the 15th?
13th.
13th.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm away on the 13th, but
Okay.
I'll
Case
see if
number-
I can participate.
Okay. Case number BA 2114, IPP Solar will be carried to December 13th with no further notice, 7 o'clock. We're good with the extension, so.
And that's still on Zoom.
Yeah, it is. We're still on Zoom, December 13th. So,
All right. Thank you all. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you, you
gentlemen.
too.
Happy
You
day.
too also.
You and yours.
Thank you.
Is there any other business of the board?
No, just Matt, I have reached out to the attorney for that other site visit and he hasn't gotten back to me yet with any dates. So
Okay.
I'll try to reach out again tomorrow.
I think, when did we reschedule that one? I think that's the 6th, right?
Was that the solar?
Yes.
No, that's the 13th.
Okay.
So we have 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's on this date too.
Mhm.
So, Rules Committee, the 29th, correct?
And that's
Next
at the-
Monday.
That's at the Ivy League, Eileen?
Yes, at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
That's next Monday.
Okay,
Right.
okay. Any other business of the board? Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And, everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Thank you, you too.
Ditto.
Have a
You
safe
too.
one too.
Everybody enjoy your Thanksgiving.
All the best.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Everybody
everybody.
enjoy. Be
Can I
well.
have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Mr. Hughes,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good Thanksgiving, guys.
You too.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.